Welcome to my class. Today we are going to discuss about a particular person. His name is Alfred Binet, and his contribution to the field of intelligence testing and the test he has developed with the help of Simon. So it is known as Binet-Simon test, maybe the most celebrated test in the history of intelligence. And this is considered as officially considered as a first formal intelligence test. There has been a load of other tests in the brass instrument era to understand intelligence, and most of them were considered as a failure methods because they were basically following the idea of sensory and motor responses. But this one has a different pattern. So this particular test of Alfred Binet was highly appreciated among the scholars community. So when you look at this person, Alfred Binet, maybe historically he was a very interesting person. His father was a physician, and he was also forced to, or maybe interested to, continue his education in medicine. But he was traumatized by seeing a dead body as a part of his training. Then he stopped his training in medicine. Then he started to work with psychology. Interestingly, he was an introvert. He didn't want to. He had very few friends, and he was a loner. And he spent a lot of time in reading. And one of the interests he developed in the during the process of this reading was understand human intelligence and differentiate people based on their skills. Even he has differentiated people in terms of reading too. He argued that based on his research and observation that intelligent people spend their leisure time in reading, and dull people, they spend their leisure time in playing. Like that, he made a very interesting statement. The statement became very important because this was one of the indication of smart people and dull people. So that's why this statement will become a little controversial. So coming back to this his work contribution, he was not an academically qualified person. He was a self-made man in the field of psychology. He called himself as a psychologist. So because of that, that means he was not formally trained by different so-called highly decorated psychologists in that time. So he was not educationally, academically accepted by other scholars. Even he was denied denied in by the academic community. He was denied a teaching role, a teaching position in many institutions. So he said, it's okay, I'll go on with my own way, like that. The point in which he started to show his contribution was related to the government expectation to understand. French government decided to understand, identify children who need special care, especially visual, intellectual, and auditory difficulties has to be identified, and their objective was to give a special training for these children. So there was a test was required, like that. So so when you historically look at the development of that, so in 1895, Binet and Henry, not Simon, Henry outlined a project for the development of intelligence test. That was a starting point. Then one of his, not his scholar, it's actually he was an intern, and he was a psychiatrist also, Theodore Simon. They both developed the test which is called as the first formal intelligence test, which is which was developed in the year of 1905, which is known as Binet-Simon scale. The objective was to discriminate children in terms of their intelligence, okay, so that a special care, they can identify children who need special care, like that. So it was basically children in the Paris school system. Now the scale had 30 tests, and these tests were highly focused on verbal skills. That means either in terms of instruction or in terms of responses, this verbal content was highly emphasized. So that means a person find difficulty to process this verbal things, he'll score very low on the on this particular test. So, for example, when a person is asked to like follow a moving object with eyes, a specific instruction will be given. So that instruction has a verbal content. So if a person fail to understand that particular instruction, then that would be little difficult. So it's basically it is focused a lot on verbal skills. Then interestingly, there were no precise total score. So what they were looking at is how many tests are failed or how many tests are passed. That was a way in which they were evaluating people. So this strategy was later changed. I mean, in the latest versions, they started to develop different methods to score them and categorize them to different levels. So there were no total score. Even Binet was had a position to, I mean, his perspective was not to find out a score and categorize people based on that. So he had a perspective like that. Later, even later phases of Binet test, especially when it went to USA by Louis Terman, they used the term IQ. And even Simon, after death of Binet, was saying, made a statement like it was a betrayal to Binet to use a term, like IQ or intelligence quotient, because Binet was with the perspective that these terms shouldn't be used. He had different ways to explain human smartness or intellectual capacities. So there were no precise total score there. So the advantage of this test was actually it is inexpensive. But actually, this idea has to be should be compared with the previous intelligence test. There were some intelligence tests which take around hours and hours, like almost 100 hours or less than that to complete a test. What a big test it would be, and tend to be very expensive because of the instruments that they use to understand human behavior. But when it comes to these kind of activities, there's I mean, some of the examples of Alfred Binet Simon test are included there. So when it comes to these kind of activities, the cost of these tests tend to be very, very small. So it was less expensive, and it was very easy to administer and tend to be a little more objective test. And the test was actually capable of predicting children's performance in school fairly well. So that was the entire idea of Binet Simon test. When it was when an activity was given to these people, a project was given to these people, they were asked to categorize them, right? So this test did that job very well. So if you think in that way, the validity of the test was like very good. So it didn't end very well actually. They developed this test, and government was supposed to use this. And in 1909, they developed a committee actually to differentiate and like understand, I mean, deal with the children or identify children with special needs. Unfortunately, they did not include a psychologist in that list. So that means the Binet Simon test was not very well used, irrespective of this glamorous entry that they made, irrespective of the glory people generally give to this Binet Simon test. It was not well used, or the objective was not met didn't met properly. So in a way, it was a interesting development, because the entire idea of intelligence testing started from this point. Current intelligence testing, I'm not talking about the sensory discrimination or motor activity based on intelligence. The current level of intelligence test that we use has started from this way. If you look into Indian perspective, we use a test which is called as BKT, Binet Kamat test. So that Binet is this Binet actually. So the origin of this test that we use in India, the most widely used the test in India, which is Binet Kamat test, BKT, is started from this person's work. I would say so much of changes has happened in actually, but this is the starting point, this is the origin. Okay, now in 1908 another version has come, that is version 2. Then first, that's first revision. So if you look at the first model, there were 30 tests. When it comes to second version, then it has 58 problems to be solved, and they developed a graded intelligence scale. So there was a pattern in that, grade based pattern in the intelligence scoring. So if you look at the previous method, you realize that there was no actually a total score or something. So basically they were checking how many tests were passed. So that pattern has changed little bit from in this area. And in 1905 test, that's the first test, more items were included to discriminate borderline intellect capacity. So when you look at the context that they need to differentiate people with who need special care, so obviously their focus is more on this borderline intellect, and they want to really specify, do they really need a care like that. So in 1905 the focus was more on this borderline intellect, but when it come to 1908, some of these items were dropped and some other items were added. So that's one of the change in this test. So basically the objective has changed. The French government, the government need that has changed in this context. Now the mental level, that's a concept that they used. They used idea like mental level, then mental age, but here at this point the mental level, that's a term that they used. The test could measure mental level from 3 year to 13 year, like that. So what is a mental level? Mental level means whichever item passed by 80-90 of the age group, 80-90% of the age group are placed in that particular mental level. For example, the one particular test, so solving a small problem, and that was solved by 80 or 90% of people in the age of chronological age of 20. Now we say that is that's a mental level, 20 mental level problem, like that. So we don't have a 20 mental level problem at this test, for example 12 or 11, like that. So mental level, almost like mental age. So this was the idea that they have identified. So we'll take a chronological age group and we'll see a particular task and see how many people are doing it. For example, very few people are doing that, passing that particular test or solving that problem properly. Then we don't consider that as a like mental level of that particular task will not be considered at that age, maybe a little lower, or some other test, some other age that would be appropriate for that. Okay, that's the idea of mental level. Now another contribution that they given to the intelligence testing is basal level. We currently use a word basal age. We still use that, okay, basal age. So age level were not more than one item failure. That means, for example, when you take age level of 3, for example, age level of 3, there would be 5 set of tasks or 6 set of tasks, and if a person complete all the tasks properly, we say that that's a person's basal age. And what if a person completes fourth age level task, I mean all the tasks, then we'll say his basal age is 4, like that. A level where all tasks are completed, at this point the little liberty was there. One item can be there can be one item failure, but now in my understanding, when you look at the current versions of it, an age where all the tests are passed, then we'll say that that's a mental basal age of that person. Then a age where all the tests are failed, which is considered as a ceiling age of that level or age of a person, like that. Anyway, so the idea of mental level later used mental age, and the idea of basal level, later we use a term basal age, are coming from the second revision of the Binet-Simon test. So a lot of contribution has made in this test. Actually, we still use these terms. That's the interesting part. Then comes version 3, 1911. By the way, this version 2, this was very popular. Even this test was taken to USA, and Louis Terman started to use this version, and he reworked on some of this test, and he developed his own version, which is called a Stanford Binet scale or test. But same time, they developed another test which was in the version 3, second revision. So at this point, some of the added element was this test was extended to adult range too. So earlier, when you look at the last version, it was up to 13. They actually the test could have used, but now it was extended to adult range too, and 11 levels were there, mental levels were there, and each level had 5 items, like that. And there was a changes in the scoring system. Then they used the word mental age instead of the mental level, and they defined it also. Mental age indicated that he or she, whoever the person responded to that tool, displayed the mental ability typical of a child of that chronological age. Or it's almost like a mental level itself. And he has given very important, very serious emphasis on shouldn't focus on the absoluteness of the mental age. That means it should be relative in nature. Shouldn't be absolute in sense. So he has given a very much emphasis on that argument. Then they never used a word, especially Binet, and Simon also was supporting him, the term intelligence quotient. He was not a fan of this idea of intelligence quotient. Then he was using a disability classification system. So that means in the version 3, under age children, under age of 9, okay, and above age of 9. So under age of 9, above age of 9, they had different classification. So if a person was 2 years lower than his chronological age, he was considered as having some intellectual disability. If the child is of below 9 years, if the child's chronological age is more than 9, a difference of 2-3 years, okay, so that was considered as an indicator of intellectual disability. So that was a classification system he used. For example, a participant, a child of age 7, and his intelligence is mental age is coming as 6. Then he said, it's okay, fine, that's almost nearby numbers. But when the intelligence go 2 points below, for example, what if his intelligence is 5, then his chronological age is 7. Now, not the intelligence, mental age. Then he considered this as an intellectual disability. So that's a classification system he had. Even Goddard, he also considered this, has taken. Goddard is actually not famous person. He's famous not for a good things actually. He was following the idea of eugenics, and the procreation of the dull people shouldn't be allowed, and there are better human race has to be developed, like that. So what he did is he visited France, and where he was exposed to this test, and he became a fan of it, and he started to use this test, and he went to USA and back to USA, and where he talked to many scholars about this test, and even actually he helped to develop, I mean, take this test to USA. Actually, he was not the person who did that, but Louis Terman was that person who did that. But he made this test famous in the West. In West means in the USA. So that was a third version of the Binet-Simon test. At the time of this version, the Terman has started to work with his administration. So 1916, Stanford Binet test has come up, first version. Now this was some of the things, task included in each level. So this is the level. So level 3, level 4, level 5, level 6. So not all the age included in the test. Okay, some of the ages will be missing also. Now we have adult also here. Now see, show, nose, eyes, mouth. These were the activities included in the intelligence test for a 3-year. So what if a child pass all this? Now his basal age became 3. What if a child pass again these 4? Now his basal age became 4, like that. And every activity, incomplete age, task are counted as months or some other classification system. So and they will be adding all this number of tasks, and a final score will they will come up with a final score, like that. So this was a kind of idea that they actually used to understand what should be the mental age of the person. So the idea of basal age, the idea of the mental age, these kind of things were developed or coined by in Binet-Simon test. So Binet-Simon, Binet, also obviously Simon too has contributed a lot to the field of intelligence testing. I think they should be considered as a pioneer of intelligence testing. This particular test was a major paradigm shift in intelligence testing, because you have to always compare this particular test with the brass instrument era, where people emphasize a lot of the instrumentation, and at the end, based on the validity testing, we realized that the instruments that we used, we heavily emphasized, were not actually a good use of to measure intelligence. So that was has to be considered a tragedy, because most of the experimental psychologists, including Wundt, all of them had their own battery, intelligence battery. So and they were considered as less useful to understand human intelligence. But as a test or as a perspective, an idea in measurement, these tests will be useful. But when it comes to the real intelligence testing, Binet-Simon is the key point. This is the starting point that we are always has to remember. Now, what are the major? I just said that it's a major paradigm shift. So the primary element is intelligence were assessed through complex mental activities than the sensory motor activities responses. Then they had a standardized pattern, like in terms of administration, in terms of scoring, like how to administer it, how to score it, like that. There was standardized pattern in Alfred Binet-Simon test. They used a norm referenced interpretation. That means the scoring was based on how on an average how people in that age group respond. That was a key to understand whether the person qualified or that particular task has to be included in that. So it was a norm referenced interpretation. Then reliability was good. That means consistency in multiple administration. This test was found to be really good. So that was very, very important. Contribution, like reliability was there. Consistency was there. Then it was developmentally sensitive. That means tasks were specific to the age. Like for example, when you look at this task, you will realize that earlier the tasks were very specific, I mean, like tasks age sensitive. So some of the I mean, not some of them, almost all tasks are relevant in that particular age. So development, it was developmentally sensitive, age sensitive. So it was a very very um, appreciated work in the in the area of intelligence testing. Now it has a different pattern where like it was efficient and engaging in terms of adaptive administration format. Adaptive administration, what is that? So when you look at this test, for example, you know, a child, he is already 8 years old. You might not ask a question from 3 years. You don't need to start from here. So in the initial interaction, if you understand that the child has, you know, like basic common sense and know what to do and all, you may not start from 3 year, 4 year, maybe you may start from 6 years. See that? So this is the adaptive testing. You can start from different point, and you have to ensure that a basal age has to be calculated. For example, what if a child respond all these things as correctly? Now you say that okay, this is the basal age, and then we'll go to the next one. What if when you start with this age itself, but he failed to, you know, like respond to success, complete one task in time, or he failed in a particular task. That shouldn't happen. Like people should start with the at an age, mental age or a mental level where he can complete all the tasks. So that's a kind of subjective interpretation of the you know, like the test taker also. But you can have an adaptive pattern. That means you don't need to start everybody's intelligence test from this particular point. You can start from multiple point. So that was like it was very efficient and engaging like that, because of the adaptive format that they used. Now it was useful for clinical assessment, like obviously diagnosing intellectual disabilities, that you have seen how he has used it, like two age below or 1 age below, 3 age below, like that. That was a way in which he was classifying as intellectual disabilities. Then this test was much useful in terms of identifying cognitively advanced students too, like those who have very high like mental age with respect to their chronological age, like that. Then sorry, there is a mistake in terms of statement. So the scale was useful in that line also. So if you look at basically, if you try to evaluate Binet-Simon test, though it had a lot of limitation, this has contributed a lot to the field of intelligence testing. So we can find a lot of mistakes in that. I mean, not complete, or if you think if you compare to the current intelligence testing and all, it is missing a lot of aspects. But still, as a starting point, this scale was an amazing test, and this scale has contributed to a lot to the field of measurement of intelligence. So that's it. Bye.